Welcome back to the Prairie Farm podcast. Thanks so much for joining. I am Nicolas.
And I am Kent.
My partner in crime over here. And we are joined by a very special guest. But before we get to that, I want to tell you a little story. I was 13.
Ooh, story time.
Yeah.
Wait, 13?
I think
Those are some dangerous years, Nick.
No, it was good. It was good. I was making brownies. I was babysitting.
Okay.
I had a little sister. No, I wasn't 13. I must have been 11 because she was 1. She was 1 year old. I was babysitting. I had put her down for a nap, and I had made brownies. That makes me sound like I really enjoy hanging out and doing things in the house.
Yeah.
I do not. That is not
quite industrious.
I guess when I was 11, that's what I was into. And the brownies just get done. I take the brownies out of the oven. And I hear my little sister kind of wrestling in her crib and awake. And I'm like, oh, I should go take care of her. And I go into my parents' room, and she looks at me, and she has the biggest smile. She is so excited because she has brownies in her hand, and she's like squishing them around. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Wait a minute. The brownies are on the counter. Oh, no.
Babysitting just got interesting.
Yeah. Finally had to do something. I think I didn't even eat the brownies. It was terrible. It was so terrible. But so for anyone who couldn't figure out, that is poop. She had pooped and was playing like Play-Doh with it in
Very
her crib.
excited.
Yeah, it was horrifying.
Very excited.
I have a distinct emotion of realizing what was going on, and I thought it was brownies. It was not brownies.
I'm trying to figure out where this is going.
This is your introduction. This is it.
Just how you always wanted to be introduced.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but one of the main memories I have from that is Mariah is her name. My little sister's name is how delighted, how excited she was for these brownies in her hand. And that is the exact, I guess, feeling I get when I talk with our guest today about prairie or wildflowers. She gets so excited. You can just see it on her face. She's so excited. Everyone, this is Laura Walter from the Tallgrass Prairie Center. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Nicholas. I think for that introduction, that's hilarious. I
spent a lot of time on that.
Only you, Nicholas. Only you.
Yeah, that's a very deeply embedded memory and quite an image for us to have in our minds as we get started.
Yes. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Laura has basically a perfect voice. It's very pleasant to speak to, and you guys probably don't have the privilege of talking to her on the phone, but I have the privilege of talking to her on the phone, and it is always a delight. She's always very wonderful to speak with, and so knowledgeable that I'm not even convinced she knows common names for prairie grass and wildflowers. I think she only knows the scientific names that are like 6 words long and like 100 syllables. I hear her recite them off all the time, and I just think
very good vocabulary.
I'm sorry about that, guys. I mean, sometimes it just takes me a little bit longer to think of the common name, especially if it's something that I learned back when I was, a student. And
no, I think it is really cool. I at first was tempted when I remember we were first talking. I was tempted to like pretend I knew what you were talking about, but after a while, I'd just be like, "Yeah, I don't know what that is." A lot of them I do, but or I can recognize them, but most of them you just see written out. You don't actually hear the word Artemisia. Or
I had an ecology professor in college who really emphasizes, and maybe it was the same deal for Laura, binomial nomenclature, he would say. Mm-hmm. Don't give me that common name. I want the binomial nomenclature. Now, I went to college up in Wisconsin, so up there is all wetland plants and
so everything started with carex.
Right. And so we had...
Which is a sedge. I know that one.
See? You know more than you think.
There's a real push, I think, by kind of that and my professor has since retired. He was my favorite professor I ever had, but he was very old school. And, you got to think at that time of education, that was when I was in college. So this has been, pushing 15 years ago when I had him for a teacher. Just being able to look stuff up wasn't the luxury that it is today. So your mind had to be this bank of information. And so I would assume that your professor that you would have had when you were in college probably was the same way, with really putting emphasis on knowing the correct terminology. And
well, I think that the reason why we learned it that way was it was more consistent. It was something that we could
that's true,
communicate,
too.
especially if we were doing stuff for research projects. Then we knew that if we used the accepted scientific name, that other people would understand what we were talking about and what our research was about.
Which is really why taxonomy ever became a thing, because somebody here could say, oh, that's a compass plant, and then somebody from another country be like, that's not a compass plant, this is a compass plant. And when you have that common thread of language, it bridges those gaps. So
we started using scientific names for things like anything with purple coneflower, pale purple coneflower, purple prairie clover. It's there's a lot of them, and they're all different. They're very different, actually, and for those names. But I wanted to start us off because Laura is one of the most experts that I know in the field personally. I don't know if there are better experts, but if they're out there, I don't know them.
There are plenty of them, believe me.
Well, I wanted to play a game where Kent, our newer guy, who is learning very quickly.
Yep. Still, even with my science background, I still have a lot to learn as far as prairie ecology goes.
And I would both make a mix. Only 2 grasses and 5 wildflowers, and you have to pick your favorite.
Oh, my.
Of the 2.
Okay.
So I might pause us and start us again when we're done with it, but
we got to write our list down.
Yep. And so part of the rules is, because Kent's kind of at a disadvantage because I've been around the field a lot longer, he gets to pick his 7 first, and I can't pick anything that's the same.
Oh, interesting.
And 5 forbs is okay, but only 2 grasses. That's where I was like, ugh. But we'll see.
No other graminoids?
Nope.
Ooh, this is tricky.
Grasses, no sedges. Well, I guess sedge would count as one of your grasses.
So maybe this could be something for a little tiny pocket prairie, or something somebody was planting in their backyard where they didn't have space for a lot of other diversity.
And I honestly don't recommend one of these mixes for much of anything. We highly recommend diversity. We love diversity. If you see any of our mixes on the prairiefarm.com, tons of diversity. But we want to see what Laura's favorite non-diverse mix.
Okay, so this is just like in a single pot.
Yes.
Even though that's probably
Basically.
not the most appropriate place to plant them. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Do you need sound effects for while we're waiting or anything?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's see.
That's really good.
What is that?
That's summer. That's a summer evening in Iowa right there. It's crickets, man.
It's crickets.
Oh, I thought you were doing a bird, but that was a really good cricket. My brain was just lapsed on it.
I was taught that by my botany professor.
Wow. Is that what you learned the whole class, the whole semester was?
No,
it
was
sat you down
what I learned on a 5-hour drive to St. Louis to go visit the Missouri Botanic Gardens.
I'm going to cut this out for sure, but I'm definitely going to try it. All right.
It's pretty close. Pretty close. You got you got the part. You just got a tongue whistle inside.
Oh, tongue whistle.
It might take another 2-hour ride back home for you to get this.
Kent and I are doing the whole way back.
I used to be able to do a really good ice cream shake blender noise.
I was like, just an ice cream shake.
Regionally specific to the Quad City area. Shout out to Whitey's Ice Cream.
So they had a blender that you could imitate. I promise we are a podcast about conservation.
You are cutting this, right? Please tell me. And I am a teacher. I'm a former teacher, so I can read upside down, but I promise you I'm not looking.
Really? Mm-hmm. Is that a skill teachers get?
That is a skill.
Mm-hmm. Eyes in the back of your head and being able to read upside down, because you're walking around, students' desks and helping them with their work, and you don't have to look over their shoulder.
Man, I wasn't a good student for teachers. Well, I feel like there's not good students who don't do well with grades. I did fine. I think teachers just really didn't. They were distressed. There was a couple, by my senior year, there was a couple of kids that the school refused to put in classes together. And I think I was one of them.
You were one of them?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't bluntly disrespectful, but my ADHD was just, it ravaged my mind. It was a nice time though. It made high school a lot more enjoyable.
I think working outside and with actual physical things is a really great thing for people with ADHD.
Yeah. Oh, it really is, because you get all the different stimuluses going. I actually found when doing homework, I will listen to Japanese music. And they're very a lot of senses. You know, a lot of stimulation going on. And but it's nice because I can't understand what they're saying, and then it just like fills my mind. I kind of focus on a thing. It really helps. All right, what do you got?
Good little tip there.
What do you got? Oh, well, that's a bummer.
Oh,
I went all tall stuff.
I think you guys are challenging me too, because really seed mix design is not my thing. I can talk about the individual characteristics of those plants, and
You get to pick what the categories are that make it a good mix or not for this
Oh,
for this
boy.
competition. You get to
Or
decide.
if you don't like either of ours, you could pull from each of ours to make like a better mix.
That is true. I'm sure many of our listeners do wonder what flowers and grasses would be a good pick for them.
SOG. I've spent a lot of hours in the SOG this summer.
you guys must use different abbreviations than we do.
Well, side oats grow on there.
Oh, I see. Okay. I would call that Bucher.
Okay.
What? Why?
Bouteloua curtipendula, which I love to say.
That's awesome. I love that for you.
It is a great, great name.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's almost as good as Symphoracarpus orbiculatus, which I had to practice for a long time before I could say
Wait,
that.
what is? I've heard that one.
It's a shrub.
All right, I need my fifth one. I think I want a coneflower.
Can't have the pale.
This is
I could do
totally not fair, because basically it's just going to be me picking which one has the most of my favorite plants in it.
That works.
Look,
Because
Laura,
it-
one of us brought you cookies, and the other one.
Well, but to be fair, I brought you cookies too.
Yeah,
It cancels out.
good.
Yeah.
They weren't brownies,
division.
thank goodness.
No, I'm gonna go through this, and I know I'm just gonna want to not cut any of it out.
Oh no. Okay, now I'm nervous. All right, okay. The moment of truth.
Mine is double spaced because I know how.
Well, wait a second. You were not supposed to tell me whose was whose.
No. You got to. You got to know. That way, you just don't know beforehand. You can't
Okay.
be thinking about it. I need it to be biased, right? Because we've been working together a lot longer, and
Wow, Nick, didn't know you had a career in politics.
oh no, we don't like politics. Politics often gets in the way of conservation. Sometimes it saves
Nicholas
it.
lobbyist Lirio.
Oh no, oh no. I have a family member that works as a lobbyist, and he doesn't like how the system works. He's not a fan.
Oh man. There's stuff I like about both of them. So that's a real cop out. That's like a
That's
mom
a good teacher.
phrase,
That's a good
isn't
teacher
it?
response.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I don't love any of my kids more than the other, right?
But we all know, Mom, I'm your favorite.
So I do like I like at least I like the grasses in both of them. The combinations are nice. I like that you have one of the larger stature grasses, but one of the slightly shorter stature grasses in each of them.
A little bit of habitat layering there.
Yes, exactly. I like the choice of the Indian grass. I think it's a slightly less competitive one of those dominant warm season grasses.
I almost
So-
picked switchgrass, but I was like, I can't do because if you only have switchgrass and you don't have big blue and Indian to keep it at bay, you can't do that.
Yeah, and
So-
then I like the little blue in the other one because little blue is such a nice, dense,
Yeah.
tufty grass. I think the side oats can sometimes be a little bit, it can be a little bit competitive too.
I
And
would have picked little blue if he hadn't already.
if he hadn't already taken
yeah.
it, yeah, I like the bunchiness of that. That's also great habitat for little small mammals and
Right.
other things that like to nest underneath those clumps. You both have milkweeds in them. I think that maybe having two milkweeds in the mix on the one side when you have such a small palette overall, that may be a little bit too heavy,
Too heavy on
the milkweeds. And
milkweed.
also,
That's a good point. Should've thought of that.
there's like your swamp milkweed is going to need, it's going to be kind of borderline whether that's going to be happy in the same soils
true,
that your
yeah.
other
It's
species
gonna be a
are,
little wet.
or
Or it needs
yeah.
to be a little bit wetter.
And I can see that there's some real your standard things that bloom in the first year and the second year in
Yeah.
the other person's mix.
Keeps the buyer happy.
Yeah.
Right. So we've got in your mix, Nick, you've got Black-Eyed Susan. So that's going to be a reliable first year kind of a
That's
plant.
one of his favorites. I knew that.
And you've got your wild bergamot and your gray-headed coneflower, which are kind of your mid-season pair. That's a heavy hitter. The Prairie Blazing Star, I love having that in there for the pollinator value, and it's just a spectacular and beautiful
I
plant.
know it's my
Starting
favorite,
to sound like
probably.
a Nick win here.
But it's tricky to get that one to establish in a planting.
It is
So that's a kind of a risk, but maybe one worth taking. Compass plant is going to take a few years before that one is really visible. So I see that one in yours, Kent, and I love that plant. But
It'll
it might
stand up tall with the big blue. That's why I liked that one.
Yep, you won't see it for a couple years, but once you do, that's going to be a lovely thing. And I love your pale purple coneflower too, and I
another
think
tall
that's going to be happy
species.
with your little blue stem. And of course, we both know that we like rattlesnake master a lot, so I'm happy with that too.
That's just my favorite one. I had to put it in there.
But man, Nick, you got the butterfly milkweed.
Got the butterfly milkweed. How I could not believe you didn't put butterfly
I know.
milkweed in.
So butterfly milkweed is probably my second favorite forb. However, it's so short that with such a tall mix that I had, it's like
that's a good point.
might be hard to see it in there, and
I would have
might even
picked
be
common
hard.
then.
Might even be
Well,
hard.
he
for it
does.
to
He has
get
common
going.
in his.
Oh, he has
I
common.
have common in
Okay.
there.
Yep.
But
Although
I also chose swamp in there, and I mostly went with that just because it was tall as well. And they do seem to grow pretty well with our common on our farm because I have to weed that field.
So you have personal experience with it.
So I was like, they seem to be pretty friendly with each other. But I think you have a good point there. My soil would probably be a little too dry for the swamp to really be.
Man, you are taking
Prevalent.
this like
If
a
you've got
teacher's pet getting his paper graded. You're like,
Hey.
oh, those are great points.
You gotta learn, right? You gotta learn.
That's true. I'm outnumbered.
And I can be a
teachers to
teacher's
students here.
pet because I was a teacher, and so I know what is the right kind of student and what kind of student do you not want.
Oh, whoa. Well, okay. All right. Now, before there are fists thrown here, I think, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to put your mixes together so we have some more diversity and
Diplomacy, I love it.
and pull those together.
Would there be any of those species if you just made a mix? Because there's 7 per species, 7 per list. Would there be any of those you would leave out?
I would probably reconsider the swamp milkweed because everything else that's on the list I think would be kind of a music.
What would you put in there instead of the swamp milkweed?
Oh boy, do I get to choose? I'd like something else that blooms late in the season, so I'd like some kind of an aster.
Like a New England or a sky blue or
I love me a sky blue or
I
smooth
almost
blue.
put that.
yeah.
Or
my-
a heath aster, or any
Yeah.
of those late flowering asters, or a goldenrod, like a showy goldenrod or a stiff goldenrod.
Asters are really cool because they are tiny and then they just cover the plant. And it's such a cool thing. We find, but sky blue aster is really tall, and so harvesting it, you get tons and tons of silage. For like 100 pounds of seed, you'll get which is 2 bags worth. You'll get like 4. I think we had 4.5 large silage wagons.
Yeah,
filled.
what?
And then trying to dry that
Oh
silage
yeah.
is.
So you cutting it a little bit before all of the seed heads are mature, so that it's then ripening afterwards. So
That's a great question for Dad. Okay. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I know that he understands certain species. The window of getting them before "quote unquote" ripeness is larger for some species than others because some have more forgiveness. Where if you get them too early, they'll still ripen and have a good germ, and some won't. You really got to get them. I think Ohio spiderwort. You've really got to get pretty on center of when they're ripe because, and I don't know why that is, but. Yeah. Real quick, because I don't think we ended up doing that ourselves. Would you read the species on each list?
okay,
Yeah, sure.
so Kent's list is
Second place list.
big blue stem, little blue stem, compass plant, common milkweed, pale purple coneflower, rattlesnake master, and swamp milkweed.
Now, for the record, that swamp milkweed, which was the weakness on my list, I nearly put sky blue aster, and I was like, no.
You would have maybe won, man.
Oh,
I know,
my.
I know.
Won.
Yeah.
Don't they say in standardized testing always go with your first intuition if you don't
Yeah,
know?
you should never change your answer. You should always go with your gut.
All these teacher lessons. Okay, now Nick, we got to get off here.
Yeah, sorry.
So Indian grass, side oats grama, butterfly milkweed, black-eyed Susan, prairie blazing star, wild bergamot, and gray-headed coneflower.
I'm very proud of that mix.
Okay. Is that
He was able to look at my list before he filled his out. So
yeah, that's
I had lists to choose from.
who created the rules for this game.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I will acknowledge your victory, and will allow you to buy me a victory slice of pizza on the way home.
What is going on here?
We're creating new rules as we go.
Oh man. Well, the reason we had, as I stated before, Laura judge that is because I don't know. They may be out there, but I don't know anyone better to look at mixes and kind of tell their quality. And she is with the Tallgrass Prairie Center at UNI, and we love working with her. But Laura, I want to start with how in the world did you get into Prairie?
Oh, wow. How far back do you want to go? Probably not the place.
You can go to your mom's first birthday if you want.
Where did the passion begin?
Yeah. Okay. I moved to Kansas when I was about 5.
Okay.
With my family, of course. And so
where were you moving from?
Various places: Colorado, Germany, Illinois. There was a series of things. So we moved around quite a lot when I was a kid.
Military kid?
No, I always get asked that, but no, I wasn't. Just a child of parents who had, I guess, a little bit of wanderlust.
Sure.
So once we got to Kansas, we ended up in the Flint Hills region for most of my childhood. And that is, if you're not aware of it, it's one of the last remaining large landscapes that's still dominated by tallgrass prairie. And so I was growing up with this stuff all around me and not necessarily aware of its value or its beauty because I was just a kid growing up in that kind of a landscape. I had a couple of events that happened when I was in high school that started to set me on this path. One of which was that I had a horse for a while. We lived in a hobby farm out in the middle of wheat fields, but they're right outside of the Smoky Hill River Valley where we were living at the time. There's a series of hills that are still they're pastured and they're with native grasses and forbs. And I loved riding my horse up in those hills. So I got permission from a landowner and I'd get the gate key and I'd go and ride my horse out in essentially a prairie landscape for hours.
Sure.
Wow.
By myself. I mean,
that's awesome.
A little bit of an introvert maybe.
Did they never said anything about trails you would leave in the prairie with the horse, or was that non-existent?
That was not, they just said, yeah, sure, go ahead, take the
Wow.
key, go up there,
That's
explore,
cool.
have fun.
That's really awesome.
And at the same place where we lived, we had this little 5-acre hobby farm. Just to the north of us was about 10 acres of hay meadow that was also native prairie grasses and forbs. It was
very cool.
Amazingly, that this little patch was preserved. It didn't belong to us. And about a year after we moved in, the fellow that owned it decided to till it under and plant it. I think it was to sorghum or wheat. And that loss, I think, was one of the things that set me on my path. Later on, I went to Kansas State University, which is in actually the Flint Hills region of the state. And I was going to be a veterinarian. And partway through my studies, I decided I wanted research experience because that would help you get into vet school.
Right.
And I talked to my biology professor at the time, and he said, well, what are you interested in for a research experience? Do you want to be in a lab or do you want to be in the field? And it was one of those moments where you don't have to think.
Right.
It's like I knew I wanted to be in the field.
Get me outside.
Yeah. And so I spent a summer working for a plant population and community level ecologist at the Kanza Prairie Biological Station that's part of Kansas State University. And his name was David Hartnett. And he became then later on after I graduated my graduate advisor. So I stayed on there and did a master's thesis doing field work out at the Kanza Prairie.
So at this point, had you abandoned the veterinarian thing?
Yeah. After that first summer working at Kanza Prairie, I was like, okay, doing, puppy and kitten spay operations under fluorescent lights day in and day out versus roaming over the hills and generating research questions and being on my hands and knees in the sun with the ticks and the bugs and identifying plants and finding snakes and being, surprised by bison.
Right,
I mean,
right.
what more could you ask for? So, so that was just a hugely important experience. And that's where I learned to identify plants and got really familiar with the prairie plants. And that's why I use the scientific names all the time. When, during that time, I also met my husband. We ended up moving to Iowa, had a couple of kids, and my life changed. So I was primarily doing things with my family and raising kids and found ways to make myself useful in the meantime by teaching at various levels.
Sure.
But when there was an opportunity to come on as a temporary native plants technician at the Tallgrass Prairie Center, I was teaching part-time, and I said, hey, would it be okay for somebody to come in and do this half-time and still be teaching? So I did that for about 9 months, applied for the full-time position here during that time, and then started here in January of 2019.
Wow.
And I'm so happy that, this is not a small, short little life journey that's taken me here. This has been a long time coming.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm so happy and grateful to be able to have landed in this. And I just, it seems like, you don't know, this is not supposed to be a lesson about life paths, right? This is about native plants.
It
but
all comes together.
It does.
Is there much of a difference, though?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if that interest, that passion is in you, then it can find expression in your life at various stages in different ways. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just glad that it's getting to express itself this way now.
That sounds a lot like a wildflower.
Aw, like just putting down those roots first.
Yeah, and then expressing itself and making its color known. And there is...
Making its color known. Wow, you could be a poet, Nick.
Thanks, man.
Man, I didn't know this was going to get so deep.
No, that's where we live. You should hear we've been thinking about recording our conversations when we drive to other interviews, because we end up having these really deep, meaningful, life pondering conversations.
We solve the world's problems.
Yeah. We've actually figured everything out. We just need
plant more native
to
plants.
To us. Yeah. Yes. That's what it is.
Yep.
That's exactly.
Yeah. We oftentimes the conversation goes, "Can you believe they're tilling that?"
Yeah.
Or can you believe they're mowing that?
Yeah.
That was today. Today. We saw this.
Butterfly milkweed. There's a lot of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yes.
Yeah, right now it's a good time to see it on the roadside.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
A month ago it was, wow, Ohio spiderwort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
But so you had mentioned there was a time in your life you got married. So you had all this education and you were in your passion. Then you got married and you seemed to do a lot more mom tasks with you kind of alluded to hanging out with your family more, which is also a passion. Did your love of nature make its way into that time period strongly at all?
Oh yeah, of course. we spent a lot of time outside. So I raised half wild children, I guess.
That's good. That's good.
We have a prairie patch in our backyard, which is now more of a savanna patch because a tree has grown up over it. And we would go out, short trips because little kids don't like to always be in the car all the time. Yep. But we'd do short trips to surrounding nature areas and let them explore and experience that. Awesome. And each one of them has carried that on into their lives in different ways. Yeah. So our oldest he's a biologist. He actually works for a biotech company, but he also loves to go out into nature and do nature photography. Our middle one is a tech guy. He's an electronics engineering tech. But he loves nature photography as well.
Very cool.
And then the youngest one is an artist and gets kind of inspired by the forms of of animals in nature, and then kind of morphs with those. So
sure.
I've noticed, because I'm not a parent and I haven't gone through that part of my life yet, but I have noticed my friends in high school, despite how they may have been raised either really strict or not strict at all or anything like that, now their life, the highest correlation of how their life, the trajectory of their life right now is based off of what their parents were doing when my friends were young enough to watch them. And so I know there's things like for instance, my mom was a teacher, and she taught me a lot of things, and she was my grammar teacher, and I know a lot of grammar things, but none of that
You
sticks.
talk pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. She
Nick
taught me
talks real good.
Oh, she would cringe if she heard this. Sorry, Mom.
You're gonna have to cut that.
But it was the love of learning that I actually got from Mom, because that's what she loves. You know, she's been in school her whole life to some degree, getting whether it was her PhD or certificates or, you know, these other kinds of things. And it sounds like that's what your kids did. You know, you may have taught them well, but what it was is you loved a thing, and they saw that and picked up on it. And I think that is really cool.
Well, yeah, they took it in their own direction.
Yeah.
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 I'm curious, Laura, you know, Kansas and Iowa, there's certainly some very significant commonalities there, right? And from a prairie standpoint, though, I guess I don't know Kansas well enough. I think I've only been to Kansas City maybe once in my life. I've actually traveled to, I think, 37, 38 of our 50 states, but Kansas is one that I have not been to in a very, very long time. And just from what I've seen, in, you know, maybe on TV shows or pictures or whatever, it does seem to be a significantly different landscape than Iowa. And from a prairie standpoint, of course, I mean, you were growing up there. Well, I guess you were a student there, though, too, in college and so forth. How have you noticed the prairie in Iowa compared to Kansas? Or even when you came to Iowa from Kansas, was it like, whoa, this is, you know, I got to think that more of Iowa's land. I mean, Kansas is a huge ag state as well, of course. But Iowa is very, especially as you get closer to the northern part of the state, and, you know, even if we went northwest of where we're sitting right now a little ways, fence row to fence row agriculture and development. Did that difference, was it stark to you when you came from Kansas to Iowa, from one prairie state to another prairie state, or is it pretty much the same deal?
That's a really insightful question, because you know, Kansas has different regions to it also. And so I alluded to the fact that part of my growing up, I was in the Smoky Hill River Valley, which is, you know, just flat as a pancake, beautiful wheat growing region. But the last 9 years that I was in the state, I was in the area around Manhattan where Kansas State is, and that is in kind of the heart of the Flint Hills region. And so you can tell by the name of the region, it's hilly, and those hills are rocky. So it's got layers of you know, some Permian geologic deposits, a little bit younger than those around here, but it's got alternating layers of limestone that has a lot of chert deposits or flint nodules in it. And shale, and those erode at different rates. And so you get really interesting kind of a topography with sort of level uplands that are almost mesa-like, and then hillsides that step their way down into valleys that have some tree cover. So there's usually what they call gallery forests down in those valleys that have bur oaks that are spaced out with some understory vegetation. But then you've got these step-like hills, but a level horizon, you know, so you look out over the horizon, it's like flat land.
Right.
But if you start to let your gaze kind of descend, then it'll follow those contours of those hills down into those forested valleys. And it's, the rockiness of that, those shallow soils, the steepness of those hillsides, those are all factors that kept that from being suitable for tillage. So down in the river valleys, you've got tillage, but up in the hills, this was used as grazing land and continues to be used as grazing land today, which is the use that it found that allowed it to be preserved as grassland. It's also been managed for that use as rangeland. And that means that a lot of that area is burned very frequently. So, an annual burn regime will help keep the woody vegetation out, stimulate the warm season grasses that they want for forage, and reduces a lot of the forb component. So the prairies have a different, getting back to your question, the prairies have a different look to them because they're much more heavily grass dominated out there in the Flint Hills, in my perception anyway. And then coming here, it was, it was absolutely shocking to see how little of the prairie is left. Now, you do have those beautiful prairie landscapes in the Loess Hills.
Right,
And I finally had the opportunity to visit those with another native seed producer, actually.
That's awesome.
Last year. It was great. Bill Buman and Chelsea took me out to some of their favorite places out there.
Very cool.
And it, it just, stirred my heart, like going back and going home, really, in a way. But the sheer isolation of these tiny little remnants of prairie that we have here was very startling to me. But on the other hand, the recognition by more people of the value of those things is something that was also surprising to me. That there were organizations around, native plants and prairies that are quite well populated, and it seemed like there were a lot of enthusiasts over prairies here that gave me some hope. And then the history also of our state's involvement in restoration activities, like our roadside programs that go back into the late 1980s, where we had such forward-thinking, conservation-minded legislators, who got together, the people with the knowledge to figure out how do we manage our roadsides more ecologically to, save money and have safety, but also have, erosion control and habitat and beauty on our roadsides. I mean, I think that's impressive. So yeah, there are differences. Yeah. But part of it is that the less of something you have, the more you appreciate it, and the more that you are willing to work to bring that back.
Yeah.
That brings a really interesting thing. We've been talking about the bringing back, because we can't have perfectly exactly what we had, even to the extent that we've said while we were talking earlier today, some species, whether it's plant or animal, have just gone extinct. They're gone. And that's like a sad thing to think about, but they're not with us.
Especially songbirds, the way songbirds have been affected. I mean, and obviously I think most of what we're talking about is extirpation, which is, regional extinction.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, from the songbird standpoint, I mean, it's pretty sobering as to what's happened in Iowa and on our planet for that matter. But
the declines in some of especially the grassland nesting bird species are well documented and pretty, pretty depressing. But then there are those hopeful signs, like the return of some of those species to areas that have been restored, and even those that are restored by management for activities that are economically viable, like some of the grazers who are grazing in ways that support populations of bobolinks. I think about Phil Specht's farm and the work that he's done in restoring that as habitat for grassland birds, while also demonstrating that he can raise cattle on that ground.
That is incredible. We were just chatting with a gentleman named Ted Cook, who I'll send you the link when we come out with it, because he talks about making it sensible for farm and landowners to put prairie and grasslands back. Like, how can we make it financially viable? Because farmers aren't bad guys. There's I've run into very few farmers who are just totally disregarding it. Most of it is they have a certain amount of land and they need to come up with a certain amount of money to pay the bank, to feed their family, those kinds of things. And they're doing it the best they know how, the best they were taught. But that brings you back to, we're not just looking back and trying to restore, we're looking for a way forward, right? Our population is higher than it's ever been. We've got to come up with new creative ways to viably and efficiently, and respectably produce vegetation, and to conserve what we had, and to do agriculture in a way that I can't think of a better term than respecting the generations after us, right? Sustainable. So without looking forward, and for you, one of the things I love about you is you are so positive. Sometimes I can be like a doom and gloom person when it comes to agriculture or conservation, but you just always.
I've actually thought about this very thing, Nick, that you just mentioned with the positivity. It's so easy when you take a stance as a environmentalist or a conservationist to dwell on the negative, because the negative is very present. Go back to our vehicle rides here. I don't know if the same thing runs through your mind, Nick, as you're looking out the window. I know it does to some extent, because you're calling out, Ford names and stuff like that. But sometimes I look and look at all the invasive plants that we have in our landscape. Or yesterday, I heard on a podcast, someone was reading off the number of raccoons per square mile in United States, or maybe it was a specific state now compared to at settlement. At settlement, I believe that number was around 1 to 2 raccoons per square kilometer is what it was. Mm-hmm. Now it's about like 200. So, things are out of balance, right? Yeah. Things are all over the place. We have all these newcomers and everything. And so it can get to this point where you can get bogged down by looking at that and say, wow, that is an impossibility to get all that wild parsnip out of here. Man. Or all the horsetail, or I spent a lot of time hoeing weeds, people. And
me too. My elbows. You see me rubbing my elbows. Yeah, that's why.
That's where you feel it. And all that Pennsylvania smartweed and everything that.
Oh, the crown vetch that people are still planting in the ditches.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You see all of that and you just think to yourself, this is overwhelming.
Yep.
But then you talk with people like Laura or Bob St. Pierre and Howard Vincent and Ed Cook and Carter Niemeyer and everyone else that we've talked to, the Brandemans and Abby Barton. These people, they have a very positive outlook. They acknowledge the negative. They say, yes, that is our problem. That's what we're up against, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're facing. But I believe that we can make the most of it. And that's really what I think Nick, he said it I wish we would have been recording during lunch, because he said it very eloquently. Then he was like, maybe it's because he was enjoying a Subway sandwich at the time. And he was just going. And he said, we're not really so much focused on getting back what we once had. That's part of it, right? We want to try and bring in native species back to where they belong. Mm-hmm. But agriculture has a place on our landscape with, everyone says 7 billion people anymore. That number's a lot closer to 8. And we're pushing 8 billion people on this planet. Far more Iowans now than there were 200 years ago, or 150 years ago, I guess would be closer to settlement. And, we have to factor that in, right? And there's got to be a reasonable way to do it. And agriculture certainly has to be a part of that plan. And so what does this modified prairie landscape look like? Well, we're not entirely sure, but we do know that prairie needs to be a part of a modified prairie landscape. And I think that that's really, really what we can consider when we look at, what Laura saw when she first cross the Missouri River here into Iowa. And I think you would have had to cross the Missouri River, right? to come into Iowa. Yeah, we're bookended. So, I think when you hear us kind of go on and on about some of the negatives, know that we have a very positive outlook too, there's going to be some good things that are going to come from this.
Yeah, one of the amazing things is when you start from 99.9% of your prairie being gone.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room for improvement.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Spoken as an old teacher, right?
That's right.
I think I put a good face on things. I think that it's hard to keep moving forward, but I don't so much have hope as I have a job to do. And I feel like that's where that's what keeps me going, is thinking that there's all this work to be done.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so somebody's got to keep doing it. And it's folks like you guys, who are actually growing the seed that is making it possible for people to see a different vision of in their own home landscape or on their farm landscape or their CRP ground. Where maybe, we were talking, I think also over at lunch about, maybe on the farm we could think more about, farming the profitable acres, and reducing inputs on those that are not bringing us profit, but then convert those into conservation, which has multiple benefits besides, also having some financial benefit for farmers who participate in programs.
Yeah.
So, and that's more that we have the knowledge to do that. We have the information. It just we need to convince those folks who are working within a system that, I think about, the farmer's not a bad guy, right? They're not wanting to destroy the source of their livelihood, but they're working within a system that has certain rules and certain dominant players that narrow their range of choices. And what the kind of work that you guys do is you are broadening their range of choices. And I think that's, we got to maybe see it that way.
It's got to make sense, and it's not just, we often use, myself and Nick, we've probably been guilty of talking about all the time, the bare minimum of they got to eat too, but it's more than that. They want to get their kids braces. They want to pay for their kids' college. They want to be able to go on vacations. They want, they're no different than any other person where they don't want to just survive. They want to thrive. And we got to make that make sense to them through, and when I say that, it's like, okay, how do we do that? We just have conversations. Well, right now, probably the biggest program for helping a farmer have financial, I guess maybe, I don't even want to use the word motivation, just a good business decision. Like, I like how Laura said, broadening the choices for that farmer to make a good business decision. Our biggest tool right now is probably CRP, right? And so that's federally allotted money through the Farm Bill program, and let's come up with more conservation programs or expand on the ones that we do have, or increase the rates or whatever. But keeping in mind that we want to help these people have the best kind of life that they can enjoy but also that makes sense along with conservation. And so Ted Cook gave us some great examples that are as alternatives to just like a CRP type of model. I talked about carbon credits. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think that can even, those could even be branched out beyond just farmers. You could take those into people living in urban areas and use them as motivation for putting in pollinator plots in urban areas. And we're seeing that happen a lot, which, by the way, would be a great time for a commercial, Nick. Our goal.
Yes, we are. Why don't you take it away? I feel like I normally do it. You got this, man.
He forgot the detail. No, I'm just kidding. I tried putting him on the spot. Now he's putting me back on the spot.
You got it.
You can put on the spot squared right there if we're keeping track mathematically.
You don't need me to put on my cheesy commercial voice again, do you?
Yeah. You can. I'll give you a script to read.
Laura, can we please tell a story about where your voice has been used elsewhere?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Laura is a professional voice actor.
Here, I got an idea.
I was paid tens of dollars.
Tens of dollars. by who?
Don't say the place, because we're going to have you, like, here's what I have envisioned. You say the exact thing you said, and if that like brings back a memory in somebody's brain who's listening in, you tell us where you heard this voice, and if it's correct, Nick,
I will send you a hat. I will send you a hat.
There we go. We'll send you one of these
that
stylish Hoxie native
Does it
hats.
say the name in the thing?
It says the name in the thing.
Oh,
the phrase says the name, so I can't.
No one's
I tried helping you guys.
But I could say, I don't know, maybe this is like me taking off my UNI logo or anything. I don't know. I don't know if I can do this. I can't do it like a commercial entity. But I could say, thank you for choosing to plant native plants.
There we go. I like it.
Good. It's so perfect.
I need to work on that one.
No, it's good. It's very good.
I'm going to send you weekly scripts, and you just record them and send them back to me, and we'll put them out for people to hear. It'll be great.
Well, we may as well give you the sample of the little voice recording of Laura's that's been out there in the.
Are you allowed to say?
I don't see why not.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you for choosing Waterloo Regional Airport.
That reminds me of the story of when they tracked down Siri. Who is Siri? and they
figured it out. I think she only got paid like $1,000.
Yeah,
to
she
go in.
kind of spoke into a microphone somewhere.
For
Didn't really
2
know what it was going to
days,
get used for, and now we all have her
And
voice.
she didn't say any words. She just said syllables, like all the noises they could think, or all of the sounds they could think of in the English dictionary. They had her say, hundreds or thousands of noises for a couple days, and that was it.
Yeah. So I mean, if you've ever flown through the booming metropolis of Waterloo, Iowa, and have gone through the Waterloo Regional Airport, you may have heard Laura's voice before.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe about 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, you would have had to be that person to hear this and get the free hat. Maybe Laura could have just called in and got the free hat. But,
It's just coming to
My poor husband could have done it.
yeah, that's right.
He had to sit in the airport once for about 2 hours listening to me.
That's right. We already
Where's
gave
my
one.
hat?
Yeah. So anyways, our commercial, all that rabbit trail.
Sorry.
No, it's good. That's our fault. It's my fault. But our commercial is when we're talking about Backyard Prairie, we have a very specific program that we're working on here, not just on the Prairie Farm podcast, but also with Hoxie Native Seeds, who raises the seed that we're talking about. That's who sponsors this podcast. And that goal is to be in 10,000 backyards by summer of 2023.
Yep, June 1st.
And we've already got a bunch of people that are putting seed in their backyard for Prairie. So if you want to get on the bus, you need to make sure that you go over to theprairiefarm.com and get yourself signed up for a load of backyard pollinator seed.
The way it works right now is if you order between now and fall in November, we're actually going to ship it to you November 10 because...
What? Why, Nick? That's so long. I want it now. 2-day shipping on Amazon, man.
Yeah, that would be nice. The wisdom of planting prairie in July, mid to late July, is non-existent. So Laura is shaking her head.
Unless you like feeding birds.
Wait, Laura, why shouldn't they plant in mid to late July through August and September?
Oh my goodness. Well, for one, the weather. We're not going to have as reliable weather conditions for those seeds to get the moisture they need. And then another thing is that a lot of those native plants need a period of cold, moist. I shouldn't use that word on. Recording conditions that kind of tricks them into to germinating the next spring. So a lot of native plants have built-in dormancy, and they won't germinate without that. So if you plant them in the fall, you're likely to get a lot more diversity, especially of your flowering things that you want for a pollinator planting. And guess what? A lot of those things are flowering right now, so they don't have seeds unless they've been stored for a while, which in good conditions, I'm sure. But your availability of the seed is going to be so much better.
Yes.
Diversity of seed in the fall. So yeah, good idea, guys.
If we send you seed right now.
And wait, I have one more reason. This gives you time to plan your garden and prepare the ground so that you'll have a good planting bed. So my favorite method is just to smother out the old existing grass, kill it dead, leave it in place, and plant into that killed turf.
Yeah. Now, what do you use to smother? Because I like that method too.
Yeah, I've just used black plastic. It's ugly as sin, but
I just used 2x4 or 2x6s. Tons of 2x6s in my
yard. You've got those lying around. Go right ahead. I don't have those lying around.
Wow, somebody's did a financial power play right there.
No, I just flipped the house.
This man owns lumber in the post-COVID era. Everyone go to Nick Lurios.
Yeah, instead of gold, I invested in lumber.
Just throw lumber around. Use it to smother
he just
grass.
throws it in his
truly
yard.
a wealthy man of waste, throwing his lumber around.
Oh no, that's a great thing. What about tarps? Have you ever used tarps before, Laura?
I haven't, because I just don't have the tarps lying around, but I suppose if it's a tarp that doesn't have a lot of holes in it, I think the black plastic cuts down on the light and that helps kill some things. Actually, a clear plastic tarp will work really a lot more quickly. It heats up the soil underneath in addition to just kind of sealing everything in there. And that's awesome. But I learned my first year here that when I was using a clear plastic tarp to clear some ground of weeds, that there are certain weeds that love the heat. I got like a solid lawn of purslane from that.
A couple of good friends of mine put their when they were in high school, their mom wanted them to put this glass table outside. So they put the glass of the table outside on the grass for 20 minutes. 20 minutes, the grass was brown.
Wow.
Just totally.
I
So
did that. I
you could
actually
do
did
it in
that.
an afternoon. You could just put out a
Yeah.
bunch of glass.
Yeah.
I did that with a tarp once. I was trying to wash off a tarp after, I don't remember why, but I like that, set it in the grass and it was a dark colored tarp in the dead of summer. And it just torched that grass underneath
Just
there.
cooked
So
it. Well, the interesting thing is that some of the species that we consider weeds, which are those introduced species that coexist in our lawns, like creeping Charlie, I've found that to survive 6 weeks under a black plastic tarp. So,
Wow.
but it's ubiquitous in lawns. It's going to move into even a planting, and it's not that hard to pull out. And it flowers in the spring and feeds bumblebees. So
yeah, and that's another good point there. Edit that cough out, please, Nick. That's another good point there. As Laura said, it's not that hard to pull out, meaning that when you have a prairie plot, and that's another conversation we have when we're on the road. Whoa, nice prairie plot, or at least used to be. Right now, it's a horsetail or mare's tail plot or something like that.
Yeah.
Mare's tail, don't worry about it as much.
You have to get in there and take care of it. You gotta make sure that you're keeping the weeds down, the invasives down.
At least the first couple of years, you got to get the
Once
grasses
it gets really nice and
going
full, then it kind of takes care of itself a lot better. But
Yeah.
make sure that it's not just prepare the ground, plant, water, walk away. Takes some time. But
if you guys ever have questions on any of these things, we have a
Yes.
couple things. One, Hoxie Native Seeds YouTube. We do like FAQ, 60-second answers on things like when is the best time to plant, or how do I prepare my ground, or how do I take care of weeds for the first couple of years. We answer those. They're not high quality videos. They're just like us sitting in a chair. And then I've written some blogs that go a little more in depth on the prairiefarm.com. It's on there. You just click on blog and they'll come up. I'm going to have Laura proofread them. See if they're actually
Be happy to.
grammarly and scientifically
wait,
correct.
I thought you had the grammar down, Nick. You
My
you really
mom's
hope your
schooling
mom.
was
You
a
better.
long time
You really
ago.
better hope your mom's not listening to this podcast, Nick.
Yeah, I'd like to put in a plug too for this is a shameless plug for the
Go
Tallgrass
for
Prairie
it.
Center website. We have a series of technical guides that are they're
it.
like brochures
Yes.
that are available as PDFs, and those go through like the whole steps, all the steps in the process, and what you would need for planting a backyard prairie
Fantastic.
would just be things like preparing the ground and
The tallgrassprairiecenter.com. Tallgrass Prairie
it's
Center.
.org, tallgrassprairiecenter.org.
Is awesome. If you guys haven't had a chance to visit it, you can see all of their resources, which there is a huge list of resources there.
Yes.
And you can kind of see all the staff and the people that are working diligently there. It's a really cool place. They've been a huge part of my learning curve because I came in, I grew up farming, but I'm not a farmer by blood. I like by heart. I'm not a farmer, but I
Sure.
do know a lot about farming. And but when I got to like the scientific side of creating prairie mixes when I came back from college, and I was lost. And Tallgrass Prairie Center helped me a lot. So
Well, that's
I
awesome.
should put in the seed calculator in there that helps you to design mixes. And so that would have helped you guys with your little exercise at the beginning
that's
of this.
True. I wouldn't have put swamp milkweed in
You
there.
should, I think you should think about that situation that you were planning this for and see what kind of a mix the calculator gives you.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
that would be the final arbiter of the whole contest. But
I've got a
Can
question.
I change my swamp milkweed to
no,
sky blue
it's too
aster?
late. You owe me a piece of pizza.
Wait, you won. You owe me the piece of pizza.
Didn't I get to make the rules? Okay, quick question for you. One that I get a lot, and I actually don't know the answer very well. Is what would you put in a shaded area if there was maybe 2 to 5 hours of sun a day? Maybe 2 to 4 hours. So a little bit of sun, but not much.
Yeah, this is getting me into my gardener's mindset for what I do at home as opposed to what I do here at work. So here at work, I'm the plant materials program manager. So what I do is I handle the seed production aspects here, and we focus on species that would be suitable for roadsides. So there's in Iowa roadsides, there's not a ton of shade, as you know. Some other states might have a completely different experience. So so from a professional viewpoint, I work mostly with plants that get 6 or more hours of sun a day. But in that situation, if somebody had a partly shaded or shaded yard, I think a good man, I hate the term workhorse species, but I think a really good workhorse species would be Geranium maculatum. This is wild geranium.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. So I think wild geranium would be great. Also, Columbine is a beautiful one. A lot of these things are early
when you
flowering.
Say Columbine, do you mean any Columbine or like red Columbine?
Aquilegia. Oh man, that's one where I don't actually have that on the top of my head. That's so funny. That Aquilegia is one where I don't know the species names right off the bat. So yeah, just the wild red Columbine that you see in savanna type systems here. I think wild strawberry is an excellent ground cover that would kind of fill in the mix. And you could go with some more, oh my goodness, Solomon seal, Marybells, sedges would be excellent for kind of filling in that mix.
Very nice.
I am hearing the most expensive mix I've probably ever heard.
Yeah, well, that's the trick is that a lot of those species are ones that that bloom early and they have kind of these tricky seed dispersal mechanisms.
And they're hard to grow. It's hard to mimic shade. I mean, besides actually making shade, we've seen people use nets kind of to mimic tree shade and stuff like that. What about grasses? What kind of grass would you put down there?
Well, there are some shade loving bottlebrush grass. Elamus hystrix would be one of the best. Like I said, the sedges, which are not truly grasses, but would fill that kind of niche.
If sedges because most sedges like wet, but they don't need as much sun then as the grasses do.
Sedges are so diverse. There's something like 110 sedge species native to Iowa alone. There's like 500 sedge species native to North America, and they are extremely diverse. So we do associate them a lot with wetlands, and they're a dominant element of those wet systems. But there are lots of sedges that are great in woodlands, both floodplain woodlands and upland woodlands, and oak hickory forests have sedges in them. There are prairie sedges. Like I think do you guys grow any of the like the copper-shouldered oval sedge, the Carex bicknellii?
We do the bicknelli.
Yeah,
Bicknellii
and brevior and some of those.
Bebs, yellow, and fox.
Yeah,
is what we've done for the sedges.
And some of those are a little bit wetter, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think fox and bicknellii are not as wet, is my understanding, and then bebs and yellow are wetter, but I might have that mixed up now that I'm thinking about it. I remember planting those in middle school, just
plugs or
sitting on the back of that tractor with the plug planter for hours. Well,
they make a nice plug though. I mean, the roots are so fibrous, nice. And they're not like something that's going to shatter like a
flower where the roots
like a baptisia or something that's got just a tap root or that's
so bad. Our white wild indigo was not fun to
That's what I would, baptisia.
Yep. And it was...
we're talking the same language, really.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing, kind of. But then it got oversprayed.
Oh.
Yeah. So it wiped it out. We had just last year had our first relevant harvest.
That's a headache because that stuff. How long did it take? 3 years before it bloomed.
3 years. We got an okay harvest, and last year we got a pretty good one.
Yeah.
And then, but we mixed it.
And that's such a long-lived species So it was literally killed out. It was not.
It was killed out. It's right on a border fence of our farm, and it was killed out.
Oh.
And what are you going to do? Because they're neighbors. They're not bad people. They didn't do it on purpose. So
right.
what are you going to sue them? Because that's your only option. There's no crop insurance for something like that. And, we're not willing to do that. We
that gets back to kind of the systems that I was talking about.
Yeah.
So what can you buy crop insurance for, right?
Yeah.
And what are the loans for? And where are you getting information from? Do you have an extension service that helps native seed growers figure out how to better grow native seed?
Yeah.
Do you have, all the tools that are at the hands of a commodity farmer to do what you do? Do you have that? As a native seed grower, you're kind of having to.
Yep. Yeah, that'd be another good creative way to, and we're essentially trying. Tallgrass Prairie Center is trying to do that. Yeah. We're trying to do that where we arm growers and land conservationists with that information. But it's true. We gotta. That's an essential. I don't want to say it's a free thing. It costs somebody. Everything costs somebody money, right?
Yeah.
Even government provided programs. But if we can creatively provide that support network for land users, and they can feel more comfortable about allowing their.
Well, that's
and also, you got to kind of that might be something that we can take away from those unfortunate situations too. Is how do we insulate our farm from a negative happenstance like that of overspray? Do you maybe take what Laura just said with these shade tolerant species and put up a tree buffer on the fence row between you and the neighbors to cut down on that spray drift, and then plant your shade tolerant species close to those trees, or maybe there's some species that just can recover from a spray, overspray better than others, and put those there. But that information needs to be readily available too, to go with the financial side of the decision making.
It's hard. Laura's been working on that quite a bit. The hard part is, I feel like for you, it's not gathering the information. It's convincing the people who have figured it out the hard way over decades to share that information, because that information is their livelihood.
That's valuable.
Yeah. It is worth a lot of money, and so we totally get it. I know. Dad he's really ready to share most things. There's a few things like cleaning side oats ground. He doesn't want to share because he knows that other people find it very difficult. And he's like, if we just clean our side oats ground. But the last time we were up here visiting with you guys, Peyton and I were up here, there was a lot of conversation about sharing things. And I think that as it becomes more regular, and there's more people in the growing industry for natives, that sharing will become a more common thing, to where we get to a point where there is general shared, kind of publicly shared information. I think we're moving that direction, and Laura is a big part of it. She's willing to jump into those messy conversations and not afraid to ask people who have it's a hard ask. It can be an awkward ask, and she's not afraid to do it. I think
I'm working on trying to figure out the logistics of enabling that kind of sharing, and that's where I see is when people start to see the benefits to themselves of getting information from others, then maybe there will be that reciprocity. And it does remind me a lot. I keep bringing up that kind of analogy of the extension service, that basically native seed growers could together build their own extension service, because nobody's going to do it for us, right?
Right.
But we don't each have to invent everything from scratch, and knowing even which species are most susceptible to herbicide overdrift, then that would be something that could guide our thinking about where we place our production areas. And knowing, which herbicides would be suitable for use within our production fields for different species, because we're not just dealing with two species, folks. We got, how many species do you guys grow?
I think we're
39.
Well, I don't think that's all of them. I think we were over 35 in Forbes last year, weren't we?
You're about on a par with what I've got growing any given year.
Right, yeah, I think. Yeah. We'll just say around 40.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, around 40.
So if you think about the complexity of the decision making that goes into managing, 40 crops at once, there's just so much going on, and I just see the benefits in idea sharing. I do it with other public growers, like the Prairie Resource Center at the DNR. We're constantly asking each other questions, and I have a listserv where I pose questions sometimes, and that's super helpful. Another plug would be the DNR. They have a series of information sheets for kind of people who want to put in a pollinator planting
very good.
at a smaller scale.
That's
so
cool.
I think they call it like Prairies 101 or something like that. So it's neat.
And consult all of these resources. Watch the YouTube videos that Nicolas has talked about. Go to the Tallgrass Prairie Center website. Go to the DNR. And when you start reading this stuff, you're getting it from, a lot of times, a different author, right? Mm-hmm. So for lack of a better term, different content creator. But they're all saying the same thing, but with different verbiage, and when you start, so this is Kent the teacher talking to you. When you start to pull your resources that are essentially giving you the same general idea, but from these different angles, you get a greater depth of understanding for what it is you're doing, and it gives you that confidence, because we all know that not everything you find on the internet is true. These are 3 great resources, of course, but it gives you that confidence of, when you put all your eggs in one basket with one resource, that can make you feel a little vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what if their way doesn't work right here on my farm because I have this weird soil type or whatever? Well, when you're seeing it coming from all these different angles, then it gives you that confidence, which confidence is such a huge part of decision making, right? Is going with it, just like I should have gone with sky blue aster instead of swamp milkweed. But
don't tear yourself up.
Yeah, no. In all seriousness, the idea is when you can make those very decisive choices and move forward with the plan, you're actually getting the plan there. That doesn't mean you're not going to hit adversity along the way. You're not going to hit some real head scratchers along the way, but arm yourself with that knowledge using these resources, and then put the plan into action. And 3 years down the road, you'll be looking back and you will have definitely learned some things, but you'll also have a lot to celebrate and enjoy. So
3 years is a good time frame to start patting yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. If you don't see anything in 3 years, then you know you did something wrong. But I get people calling me 2 weeks after they plant it. I'm like, look, they're not petunias. They're not.
Although hairy wild petunia is an amazing plant. And especially for those gardening.
That native?
Yes.
Really? I didn't know that.
Ruellia humilis. I know you'll remember that better.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But hairy wild petunia is fun to say too. And that's, it's a fairly short growing little plant. So, edge of a garden, it flowers almost all summer long, starting about now.
Wow.
And it looks like a petunia. Kinda. But the leaves are hairy, and it's a super cute plant, and it has exploding seed pods. So it's great for, if you're a former teacher or just have kids and interested in that, throw some of those seed pods at the end of the season into a paper sack and leave them, like in a kid's bedroom at night, and they'll hear like popcorn in the night as the seed pods explode.
Cool.
But yeah, super, super cool species. And I get excited about it. I have it all over, like the edges of my garden beds at home now.
That is so
Very
cool.
nice.
Do most greenhouses carry that?
No,
right.
I think you should.
We should carry it?
I think you should carry hairy wild. But the seed is super easy to clean too, because it looks like little lentils.
Can you put it in CRP?
Good question.
I don't know. You very well could. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
well, if
I don't
you
know
give
how
us a
expensive
call,
it is.
we can definitely get you some. We don't grow it right now, but we can definitely get you some. Yeah, I do think we're getting close to time. We're going to need to start wrapping up. I know it's so.
Wait, there's just there's a burning issue I have to talk about.
You share whatever you need to.
And that is where our seed comes from. And I know that you guys at Hoxie Native Seed have grown a lot of Iowa Ecotype seed in the past. Are you still participating in the Yellow Tag program? Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
for sure.
Yay. All right. Whew.
Remind there's 2 programs, Iowa Ecotype and there's Yellow Tag.
Right. So Iowa Ecotype Project was founded with a partnership with some different organizations, but it was here at the Tallgrass Prairie Center, UNI, where we were in communication with DNR and other organizations. But the original aim of that was to produce Iowa sourced seed for Iowa restorations. And it was originally intended for roadsides, but now, those Iowa ecotypes end up in other seed mixes as well.
Right.
So we we harvest originally, we collect our seed from remnant prairies in Iowa. And then for each individual species, we'll take multiple remnant collections. So we'll go around to a bunch of different prairies, harvest the same species from those prairies. We'll clean that seed. We'll grow plants from that. And then we'll grow those out here at the Tallgrass Prairie Center, harvest that seed, and make that available to native seed producers like you at Hoxie. And then you can grow stuff where you know that stuff has it's like a pedigreed dog. You know what the ancestors of that dog is. You know what the ancestors of the seed is. That it came from Iowa. It's part of our heritage, and it's adapted to our state. And because we've gone out and we've collected it from multiples of these tiny remnant prairies, you've got as much of the genetic diversity from across our state as we could possibly capture. So that stuff's got the raw material for being able to adapt not only to everything that Iowa throws at it now, but hopefully on into the future.
Yeah.
So if you guys are participating in the Iowa Crop Improvement Association's yellow tag program, that means they inspect your fields and they give you a yellow tag that you can stitch on that bag, and that tells the buyer that they're getting Iowa source seed. So your purchasers can also ask, "What's the source of my seed?" And you can tell them, you know where that comes from.
Yes.
So
it is a really cool thing. We actually focus on. That is our niche. Is we focus on local Iowa seed. We do provide.
Nick.
Pardon?
You said it.
what did he say? Niche?
Oh, niche. Oh, that's right.
Are you a niche guy?
Yes, there's two ways to say the word niche. There's the right way, which is niche, and there's the annoying way, which is niche. And
Okay.
Nick just used
Laura,
the
how do you
annoying
say
way.
it?
How do you? I want to ask you a question first.
Oh yeah.
I'm turning the tables on you here.
Yeah.
How do you say Liatris?
Liatris.
I like the way you say that.
Yeah, I'd say Liatris.
I hear a
That's
lot of
Blazing Star, right?
Liatris, and I grew up saying Liatris.
Liatris. I like Liatris how it sounds, but I think Liatris would be. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that one too. Now I've been around so many people who say that in so many different ways that I don't know how I say it anymore. But
Sorry,
anyway,
Nick.
I distracted you from your
no,
argument
you're
there.
good.
But
I don't even. Oh, we were talking about our.
Don't even go back to it.
Yes, Iowa ecotype, and they found what was happening is where land is cheaper, you can grow things cheaper. So people were growing big blue stem maybe in Arkansas or stuff like that, and then they ship it to northern Iowa or Minnesota, right? Same species. Why is it going to matter? Well, their growing season's longer. And over hundreds or thousands of years, big blue stem down there has figured out, I've got 3 extra weeks to grow and to produce seed. Well, by the time they start producing seed and their seed becomes viable in Minnesota, it's too cold and the plant dies, or it goes into dormancy before there's any seeds produced. And someone along the way said, "Hey, this is not good. We should stop this." So I'm sure that was the birthplace. I don't know whose idea the yellow tag or the ecotype was, but we do get orders from Illinois, from Missouri, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, stuff like that. We'll use our seed. We don't mind doing it, but we don't have seed from there. So honestly, a lot of times we look for local places that are there, and we're going to buy it from them and have them ship it directly to you. And we're going to get a cheaper price because we're a supplier, and then we sell it to you at whatever their normal reach. So you're paying the same thing, but the point is we attempt to get seed from as close as where you are as we can. And sometimes that's not always possible. I know Illinois specifically, we haven't found that many strong ecotype growers that are ready to, ship consistently and streamlined.
Available market.
Yep, exactly. Minnesota's really good about it. Missouri is just about strictly yellow tag. It's for their CRP program, which is cool. I understand that limits things and it makes things a little more expensive, so I get the give and take there. But it's interesting to say.
Well, and you kind of got to look at it too from a standpoint of if that's what's available to you. There's still a lot of benefits. I mean, yes, it's best to have the matching ecotype if at all possible. But if you can't get it for whatever reason, there's still a lot of benefits just to having those grasses or those forbs back on the landscape. I mean, you think of water quality, air quality, carbon sequestration, habitat, all these things that can still be provided from a non-matching ecotype. But it does then limit you down the road too if you wanted to harvest that. And in fact, we had that problem on our own farm clear back when, if you go back to episode 1, when we interviewed Carol, that's what happened to him at first when he first tried growing, I think it was Indian grass. He had a Nebraska ecotype, and so he had to torch that all and start over for, I think it was a third time, and put it into an Iowa sourced seed variety. So certainly, it's best, even if, like, let's say someone's listening in right now and they're looking at managing a hunting property or something like that. They want to have more habitat, more switchgrass or something, right, Nick? For deer or pheasants or turkeys or whatever. You're going to want to try and get it as right as possible starting out. So see if you can find that matching ecotype, right? Just start off, you're already putting in all that work. Even if it costs you a few extra bucks, bag of seed, it's worth it to do it right the first time. You'll always feel better about it going forward. And, that's something you can hang your hat on too. This is seed that matches where my ground is from. So
it's a long-term investment too. It's not like you're buying that every year. It's something you're putting that in the ground and that's going to pay off in the long run. Yes. And I really like what you said about, if you're faced with a choice where you've got a list of species that you want in your mix, and you're getting as many of them as you can from that are Iowa ecotype, and there's like one species that you just cannot get available that's from an Iowa ecotype, it would be probably better to have that species in the mix than to leave it out because you just can't get the the Iowa source.
So how important is the ecotype? And what I mean by that is, so let's say you can't get anything closer than Arkansas or Nevada. Like, how important is ecotype?
You could probably draw a line. It's a tricky question, and there is some research into it. And the way that people do the really definitive research is they take plants from different ecoregions and they grow them together in the same place, and they call that a common garden experiment. And they look to see if there's adaptation to those places that is that still there when you grow them together, so that you take them out of their regular habitat, and this plant from this drier region is still shorter than the others, or whatever that trait may be that's observable. And so there's quite a lot of evidence that there is ecotypic variation in plants. I've got to be really careful here because I've read a lot of things, but I don't always have a ready answer for you. So I might want to go back to the books and look at this, or back to the papers. But there's mixed information about whether the home place advantage holds all the time. So there's kind of the majority of evidence says that your home-based ecotype is going to have an advantage of some sort. But there's sometimes cases where something from out of your region has an advantage and maybe have a greater growth rate. And you might think, maybe I should get that cultivar from Missouri because it's going to grow faster and provide more forage, and it's going to provide erosion control faster. But then you got to think, are there other functions that you want your planting to provide? Do you want it to have, that habitat structure that benefits wildlife? Do you want it to have the floristic or flower diversity for pollinators? If you want to have those features, then maybe you don't want the fastest growing biggest big blue stem that you could get on the market, or the most productive switchgrass, because those things are going to dominate the thing, and you're not going to have those other features and those other functions. So I think it's a complex question. It's not like I'm saying you have to have ecotype all the time, but I think in a lot of cases, especially where it's a long-term planting and it's a long-term investment on your part, I think it's worth it to go that route. I think the bulk of the evidence says go that route if you can.
Yeah, and I think most importantly too within that is make sure it's a native.
My goodness, absolutely.
There's
100%.
So much. I mean, even Nicolas and I were talking about one that we see all over the place that seems to have been intentionally planted on roadsides. That is not a native.
What is this one that you're talking about?
Chicory.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think it just may seed itself. The one that I see is crown vetch.
Okay.
And that stuff is awful. It is very, very pretty. And I describe it as the mean girl of plants. It's pretty, but you don't want to associate with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you, Reed's Canary?
Oh, okay.
I've
I
got
have
a bad
hatred for that plant. Okay, you think I'm a positive person. You just get me talking about Reed canary grass.
I've got Dad thinks one of his friends might have brought it into the state. Isn't that crazy? He thinks that, well, at least in our region, Dad said he'd never seen it anywhere around where he was, and he had a young friend when he was like 30. This was on our first episode. It was actually the guy who helped him establish his first prairie. He was a veterinarian and a very interesting guy. And he trying to figure out something to work on a bank next to a stream.
And he wasn't speaking of it with pride, I don't think.
No, he was like...
I think he later on realized his mistake.
Yeah, he was embarrassed.
Yeah,
but
if
Dad
you
said that it just started exploding from that guy's farm and just took off everywhere.
That stuff is nasty, nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And again, we've talked about this before. That's where, burning can help. Make sure it's burning at the right time of year. Get that cold season grass out of there.
Yeah.
And
I've seen actually someone burn a cow pasture that was almost all brome, and he burned it when brome would get to 2 joints where it was basically stiff enough to burn but fragile, and he burned it 2 years in a row at that point, and it basically wiped out all the brome. And the next year he had little blue stem, big blue stem, switchgrass, Indian grass, side oats, grama, all of these, a couple sedges came in naturally that have it's never been tilled. It was cow pasture.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, which I think is so
that's
cool.
another good little tidbit there too. And I'll get back to where I was talking earlier. But if you have that cow pasture on your ground, maybe you just bought an acreage or something off of somebody, or maybe it's a family farm and you're done with cows or whatever it is. Realize that if that's historically been, livestock ground, there's going to be some of those root systems still down there, most likely. If it's never been tilled or sprayed, they could just be lying dormant under, some of these newcomers that have been shading them out for so long. Mm-hmm. But don't lay a plow or a disc to it yet. Give it a fair chance. Try and get some remnant seed coming back up. And then you got the right ecotype, and you got a native.
Yes.
Find out what's there first. I think that is a good approach when you have existing grassland. Yeah. Or even some of our grasslands that have been, covered up by shrubs and trees.
Yep.
Yeah. Get in there, control that brush, and see what's there first before you you smoke it all with herbicide and start over.
We don't want to be the Home Depot of Prairie. We don't want to convince you that you're going to work for 30 seconds and have a new painted room. That's just not how it works. So those commercials, they're terrible.
Maybe we need but wait, like how Sherwin-Williams has that slogan, like cover the earth.
Yes.
Maybe we need that for native plants.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Sherwin-Williams, if you'd like to sponsor this podcast, you'll allow us to use your...
Maybe they could do a line of paint colors that was inspired by a wild bergamot and gray-headed coneflower.
Butterfly milkweed.
Butterfly milkweed? Yeah, that'll be for the teenagers' room.
Bright orange. Oh, man. I feel like they could actually put some of the petals of the flowers into their mix.
There you go. A little
selling full flower petals or something.
3D paint.
That would be very niche.
Yeah, that would be very niche.
Laura.
Wow. Man, Ken, sounds like you're having a hard day. We talked about a lot today. We talked about being a teacher. We talked about your favorite species in a mix. We talked about you growing up, and we covered importance of ecotypes. We covered, my little sister's poopy diaper. What did we not cover today?
Don't remind me of that.
Yeah. I was going to say earlier, I want to get back to this point because make sure that what you're planting is a native, because I was just looking at a bag. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if we bought it or if we just bought our house for my grandparents. and I don't know if it was, I was cleaning out a shed on the property, and there was a bag of a well-known brand of seed. I don't remember what the species was, but it was not a native pollen. It was a pollinator mix, and a lot of the species in there were natives, but there were at least one or two that were not. Mm-hmm. And so, buying from a place like Hoxie or somebody that we would recommend as being a safe buy to match your ecotype is definitely the way to go.
Amazon.com is not the place to buy wildflower seed. No. You type in wildflower seed mix on Amazon, and you're going to come up with a bunch of stuff that is like Eurasian wildflowers that have no business being here, just like our wildflowers wouldn't be good there.
Yep, and that's exactly how we end up with these invasives that dominate the ditches.
Yeah. I heard dandelions, not even from North America. Do you know? Is that true?
I believe that's a European, isn't it?
And bull thistles. I heard bull thistles are the same thing.
Mm-hmm. But pasture thistle, the ones that have the white underneath the leaves, those are a native plant, and they're a wonderful pollinator plant.
Really?
Observe those sometime, and you're going to see bumblebees, butterflies, moths, beetles.
I can't imagine trying to
Maybe they'll make it. Maybe they'll make it onto a episode of Beautiful Weeds, Nick. When I'm
Beautiful Weeds, he's got a series going.
Oh man! Okay, I'll be back.
Yesterday was
call me.
Yesterday was Flower of an Hour. It was little hibiscus.
Oh, hibiscus trionum.
They're beautiful.
Beautiful little flower.
Yeah.
Man. Well,
okay.
Laura, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you guys for inviting me and for coming up here.
Yes. Next time you have to come down, and we are getting a podcast studio, so you'll be able to. Hopefully, by the time you come down, we'll have that going.
Exciting. Then I'll be even more nervous. It'll look so official.
No, it'll be great. It'll be great. You were amazing. We love hanging out.
Thanks,
and
you too.
Interviewing you. You are awesome. And Kent, do you want to do the honors?
Close us out.
You want to do it?
Yeah. So a couple of things of homework for you. Make sure you come over to, can you give us the website one more time, Laura?
tallgrassprairiecenter.org.
There you go. So head over to the Tallgrass Prairie Center website. Also head over to hoxieNativeSeeds.com and the prairiefarm.com. You can
the prairiefarm.com over Hoxie Native Seeds, I'd say.
Wow.
Wow.
So head over there, and you can. The nice thing about the Hoxie website is you can get some of the about us information and more of a historical understanding, I guess you could say. But the Prairie Farm is going to give you that link to the other big thing we got to talk about. Our goal by 2023. We want to be in 10,000 backyards by the summer of 2023. We already got a few faithful conservationists out there who've helped us get going towards that goal, but we need a lot more of you. So make sure you head over there, get that seed thrown in your virtual shopping cart, and get your yard prepared and planted this fall. That's when that seed will be going out, because we want to make sure that it's in the best condition when it gets to you and ready to be planted. So make sure you do that. And when you do all that, you are keeping up with our goal, which is conservation happens 1 yard at a time.